Let's talk about Logitech. I've got a few new updates to do, and one, if I have time, I'd like to get to. But there's two kind of more important ones, especially for this group. I'm going to jump right through. So a few months ago, we announced a new product that might sound very familiar to you if you know Logitech. It's the Meetup 2. You might remember the original Meetup. The Meetup has been around for about 7 years. It was a very, very disruptive product in the industry, and it is from what I'm told, the highest selling product in Logitech's history, and that's saying a lot. And that's not just the highest selling video conferencing product in Logitech's history, the highest selling product. And if the information I got is correct, that is pretty sizable situation that's the case. However, it was designed 7 years ago, and it really needs a refresh. There's two specific reasons we needed to have it a refresh. First of all, in the last 7 years, Logitech has let out in how it designs products sustainably. So in our new sustainable model, the Meetup 2 needed to be brought up into our new ways of designing and building and manufacturing our products. So the Meetup 2 needed to be brought up into that category, and we did that significantly, and we brought that up in line with our carbon neutral footprint and our sustainable way we deploy our rally bars. Now, I don't have time to spend on sustainability today, because that in of itself is a full conversation for it. But just know that the Meetup 2 was we are now designing within a very sustainable way. But the Meetup also needed an infusion of AI, and what I mean by that is the classic Meetup was a dumb device, and marketing probably hates that term when I say that. But what it means is that the Meetup 2 didn't have any onboard intelligence at all. We did give it some cool features and functions, but we did that by putting software on whatever the Meetup was connected to. But on board, it didn't have any onboard intelligence. And in the modern age of video conferencing, I know that sounds weird. 7 years ago is probably, Jurassic times in when it comes to what we're doing. And so it was designed 7 years ago. It really needed some new modern technology be brought in. So in May, we announced the Meetup 2, and we just recently started shipping the Meetup 2. There is some great new functionality this has. First of all, you'll notice it has a very similar look and feel to the old Meetup. It is more square as opposed to round, but other than that, it's very similar. So it has a very similar design footprint to what you would expect. But what it does is we've added some onboard intelligence. It is still designed to be deployed in the same types of use cases the old Meetup was deployed in. For instance, the old Meetup 2 was classically used for Windows-based room systems. So a Zoom room or a Teams room with a tap controller, a Nook or some other small form factor room system, and then the Meetup. That was classic way to deploy the Meetup. That is still one of the key ways to deploy the Meetup 2 today. But one of the key ways the Meetup has been deployed over the years, still holding very strong, is as a BYOD device. And not only have we deployed that and given some extra onboard functionality for that, we've really stepped that up, and I'll talk about that up later when it comes to BYOD deployments. So Meetup 2 works with all the major platforms, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Meet. It has the onboard AI features that you would expect, right sight, which is the framing technologies we expect, and onboard noise cancellation and everything else. It really steps up, so it can do group view, speaker tracking. We can even do grid view, where we can break everyone up into their own windows, and then we can actually set like distances for that framing technology. All those AI technologies that you'd expect are on there. The noise algorithm, the sound algorithm that cancels out noises and suppresses echo and makes the audio just high quality in the room. That has been totally updated with a new algorithm called Right Sound 2, and that has been updated to the Meetup 2, and all of that increases what the classic Meetup did. We're just making that so much better. However, in the BYOD world, the classic Meetup also had some limited functionality that most people expect nowadays. And what I mean by that is the ability to remotely manage and monitor it. Now, if I was taking a Meetup or any of our devices and connecting it to a room system, that room system can fully manage and monitor that device through our cloud platform called Sync. That's not ever been a gray issue. And in the Meetup, the classic Meetup could totally be managed that way as well. However, when you put it into a BYOD room, the classic Meetup is dark until someone comes in with their laptop and connects to it, which means IT cannot see that device until someone tries to connect to it. And IT would only know that device is having a problem or needs a firmware update once someone connects to it. And truthfully, once they unplug from it, they lose visibility to it. So it wasn't very useful when it came to having the ability to remote manage and monitor it. So what typically happened with a lot of BYOD rooms, including rooms with Meetup, is IT departments, to manage and monitor them, had to physically walk into the room, connect to them, check on the device, update the firmware, and then move on to the next room. That is not very scalable when you have a large deployment of Meetup of BYOD devices. So what we did when we built the Meetup 2 is we made it, we gave it an Ethernet port for management. So that BYOD device now is, even someone is not connected to it, they can remotely manage and monitor that device even if no one is connected to it. Fully managed device is part of our product. We also added the ability to add digital signage to the Meetup 2, because that was also one of the things that you would often pair in a BYOD room, a digital signage processor as well as a BYOD room. And so then you would have to add switching and figure out what switching looked like when someone wasn't in there, because you don't want a dark screen. You want to have either the calendar on there, or maybe the weather or company updates and information, because that room, if it's not being used, it is dark. And so what we've added to the Meetup 2 is the ability to add digital signage through Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and AppSpace on launch. More to come in the future, but that digital signage, so it can actually be a digital signage processor as well. And the last thing we added to it is a single cable operation for the Meetup 2. And what I mean by this is, like, in a BYOD scenario, you always have to worry about connectivity to the display and connectivity to the device itself. So for USB connectivity, those two cables are always part of every BYOD connection. What we've added is the ability to give you a single cable operation. So with an add-on cable, it's a USB 5-meter active cable that you can add on. It doesn't come in the box, so you can have to add it on. You can get a single cable operation. So without any drivers needed, I can take one USB cable, plug it into my laptop, and it'll both connect my display of my laptop and USB connectivity directly to the Meetup. And now I get a single cable operation for that. This is a huge upgrade for what we did over the Meetup. For those designers in the room, how am I on time? For those designers in the room, we have the multi-mount that's included in it. So I'm going to jump ahead off of the Meetup 2. If there's any questions, please, we'll hopefully get to them at the end. It's got,
yeah, you're good on time. You're at,
okay,
got another
good.
20 or 15 minutes.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, that's good. Then I'm going to stay here for just another minute, because mounting, it comes with a mount in the box, which means it'll mount to a display, it'll mount to a credenza, and it'll mount on a wall. It's got a tripod mount built in, so that if they want to mount it to a tripod, it mounts. These are really good for especially a third-party mounting solution or a cart, if you're going to put it onto a cart. It also has a VESA mount available to it. So it's got cable management, and here's what the back looks like. It's got an HDMI out, so you can plug the display directly into it. That way I can use that single cable operation. It's got an Ethernet port for management, but it'll also connect Wi-Fi for even rooms that don't have a LAN port in there. It will connect Wi-Fi as well if your customer prefers that method of connecting. Again, that is just for remote management and monitoring. It is, as I said before, this does not have the ability to be a standalone room system. So it's always going to need an external device to connect to, which is what it is designed for. This device is the same price as the Meetup when it originally came out, which was $899. So that's a very good price for a single operation, for a BYOD single bar camera like that. So it's a very low cost entry into standard huddle room kind of solutions. I'm an engineer, so don't ask me what your discount price is because I will have no idea what that would be. Any questions on the Meetup 2?
Questions on the Meetup 2? No questions right now on Meetup 2.
Okay, cool. Let's jump on to some of new AI features that we've updated some. So, and I'm just going to set a little context. AI on our bars, typically, we've already talked about it with the Meetup 2, but it applies to all of our bars. We have things like automatic light adjustment, our automatic sound, which is on the Meetup 2 as well as our Rally bars and other devices. We have things like group view, speaker view. We've already talked about some of this, but let's stop here on grid view. I mentioned this with Meetup 2, and it applies to our bars as well. Grid view is something we have been doing for a while on our bars, and it works really well. But I typically only like grid view when everyone's sitting on one side of a table and facing the table, because that way it can break everyone up into their own boxes. When you do a classic boardroom style meeting room, and this is our grid view running in a classic boardroom style, there's two problems with grid view, and I usually ask people to pull them out, but I don't really have time for you to hem and haw. So I'm going to point out the two problems right now. Typically, the two problems in the classic boardroom style, if I'm using grid view, is what I would call hitchhikers. That's number one. So, for instance, we've taken her and set her in her own box, but you notice he's in her box and he has his own box. These are what I would call, he's a hitchhiker in her box. Same thing with her up here. She has her own box. His head is hitchhiking into her box and she's hitchhiking into his box. That's the first problem with classic boardroom style and grid view. And that's because software cannot change the laws of physics. We do not have a separate angle to get to them at, and so we are limited to what we see based off of where our camera is. So that's the first problem with grid view in this kind of style of room. So I usually recommend grid view is when everyone's sitting all looking at the table in those like a Microsoft signature room or other rooms where everyone's sitting on one side of the table looking directly at the camera. That's a really good use for grid view. I'm showing this because it shows because I'm going to show you a fix for this here in a second. The other problem with this is that because the cameras are focused in on the front of the room right here, it softens the focus of the people behind there. And that's, again, you can't change the laws of physics with software. And so all of those are part of our overall reaching AI experiences. Now, one of the ways we've done to fix this is by adding a separate extra camera angles out at the table. I think we've done this. I think I've presented the sight camera the last time I was on, and the sight camera is an addition to our rally bars. So you need a rally bar. That's going to give you a front of the room camera experience. And then sight sits in the center of the room. So it looks like this. The rally bar's here. Sight sits in the center of the room, and it gives you two extra camera angles out in the center of the table. Thus, fixing that problem with grid view and giving you direct access with different camera angles. Sight, when it was originally released, though, only used the sight camera for these columns, or this what we would call grid view of out here, and then the rally bar only came from the group view here. It was a good experience, and this looks like a great experience when I'm looking at it. But one thing I'm going to point out to you is these essentially actors that they're Logitech employees that we've got to do this. They've been prompted to only look at each other across the table. Why? Because if they turn to look at the far end, because in this column, her column, this lady's column here, you would see the side of her head, because you would see her looking at the far end in the group view down here, but you'd see the side of her head in here. That's where things are not as good. But we just released a new feature called Smart Switching. Smart Switching, and I'm going to have to stop sharing and start sharing again to show you this video. So I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to show you what the new experience is with Smart Switching. Smart Switching, grab the, oops, wrong one. I grabbed the wrong one again. Sorry. Got to get the right window. So Smart Switching is, here's the little video for Smart Switching, and I'm going to point out what's going on. We're going to focus on Sarah over here. She's doing what those other actors did in the previous video, and they're looking across the table at her. Now watch what happens when she turns to look at us. So in a second, she's going to turn and look at us, and at first you see the side of her face, but now the rally bar realizes it has a better view of her, and within only her column, it switches to pick up Sarah. Now in the other three columns, because they're still looking across the table with the side camera, in their columns, they're being picked up by the side camera. And the same thing will happen if the different people change to turn to look. And so based off of where their gaze is, that's which camera is going to pick you up. And so that's a new feature update within with our side camera. It was just released a few weeks ago in 1.13 of our firmware release. No one has to do anything to get this release. There's no cost or anything else. It's just part of our firmware release for that. So that's Smart Switching. Any questions about Smart Switching?
I don't see any questions yet about Smart Switching. I do have some at the end that relate to Logitech site, which I now see on your screen.
Yeah, let's talk about those.
Is this a good time for me to bring in a Logitech site question? Great.
Yes.
Can the Logitech site be installed upside down?
It cannot. It is designed to be sit at the center of the table. It is not, and there's nothing on the roadmap to let it be inversed. So.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
And I have another question here, and it's related to the Meetup 2. Can the Meetup 2 with a USB-A to USB-C connector, sorry, can the Meetup 2 run with a USB-A to USB-C connector, or does it have to be USB-C to USB-C?
For that BYOD single cable operation, it does have to be USB-C, and that's not anything to do with us. That's because USB-C has the technology. It's called USB alt mode technology, and USB-C holds the alt mode technology. USB-A doesn't have that, is not available. So if you do want to have USB, like if a company hasn't standardized on laptops that have USB-C yet, they can still do it, but they would do a classic BYD experience where they're running an HDMI cable out to the table and a USB cable out to the table. So that would still work. It'd just be a 2-cable experience as opposed to the 1-cable experience. To get the 1-cable experience, you do have to have the USB-C ports available. And that's because the USB technology allows that. It has nothing to do with Logitech. So next, any other questions? Then I have, if we have time, I have one last little cool thing
we absolutely have time, and it looks like there is a question, but if you have another slide, we can save the questions until after. Well,
this is just another product. It's a quick product that I want to add. So
let's do
it. This is something that maybe customers won't find it as cool, but designers and technical people and people building rooms and speccing rooms will want to know about. And that is our new, our internal project name, and some of my slides will still call it that, is called rAVe, but the name that we announced on October 7th for this product is called Logitech Extend. Essentially, let's say I take that same experience. So as I said earlier, the standard BYOD experience will need a 2-cable connection. So this is a standard BYOD experience, right? It's going to have a USB-C cable out to the table and an HDMI cable out to the table. Now, classically, the way you would do that is you'd either put a long cable out to the table, but if you go beyond 3 or 5 meters, USB-C doesn't allow for extension beyond there. So you had to use some sort of third-party extender for it. And then I also had to extend HDMI out to the table. And if it was beyond a standard HDMI cable length, you had to use, again, third-party extenders to do it. So Logitech just built its own extender. This is something we have done in the past with our Switch product, but it was really a kind of hybrid use of our Switch product. Switch was originally designed as a switcher. That's why it's in that name. And it's still that case. The Switch product is still going to be our method of switching between two sources, Windows-based PC and like the laptop in the room. So it's not used for that kind of scenario where it's used for switching. But for instance, a Rally Bar, the Meetup 2, the Rally Bar Huddle, the Rally Bar Mini, they have an internal BYOD functionality where they have an internal switching mechanism that senses when a laptop is connected to one of these other ports, and it'll just automatically switch over to that. So we don't need to do switching with it. All we really need to do with this product is extend USB and HDMI out to the table. And so what we did is built this it's basically a send and receive box. So you have HDMI input here and HDMI input here, and then it uses category cable to extend this out to the table. So now I can go long distances. I can extend, if I use Cat 6, I can go up to 100 meters on this run. If it's Cat 5e, I can go up to 60 meters on this run. And now I can extend that single cable operation similar to what I described with the Meetup 2, but I can give that single cable operation to a Rally Bar or Rally Bar Mini and extend it out that long. And so this is a very useful device. I don't have a ton of time to get into the details on here, but if you do have questions on that or anything else, I'm happy to talk about them. And then whatever my time is left is yours for questions.